Childs, and this is my argumentative speech. My topic is vaccinations. Measles, mumps, rubella, tetanus, hepatitis, diphtheria, polio. These are all diseases we don't hear much about today, in large part because they have been eradicated by vaccines. Vaccines save lives. Even though this has been proven time and time again, some people fear the vaccines themselves more than the diseases they prevent. I'm here today to increase your confidence in the efficacy of vaccines and give you more information so that you can make the right decision for the people that you care about. According to a study at the Pediatric Academic Society, over 10.5 million cases of infectious diseases have been prevented by vaccines, and 33,000 lives are saved every year since their implementation. The Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, and the American Academy of Pediatrics all fully endorse vaccinating and vaccinating on time. A vaccine is defined as a biological agent injected in order to expose the body to a weakened version of the virus so that immunity can be built. Diseases that are immunized against include smallpox, influenza, diphtheria, tuberculosis, hepatitis, and polio. I would like to address 7 of the most common arguments against vaccinations in hopes that with more information, you can make a decision based on research and not fear. Argument number 1. Vaccines are linked to the increasing rates of autism. This idea became popular with the publishing of an article by former Dr. Andrew Wakefield in the British medical journal, The Lancet. In his article, Dr. Wakefield alleged that the MMR 3-in-1 vaccine was responsible for increasing autism rates. This was very alarming. Parents all over the world were afraid, and many decided not to vaccinate their children based on Andrew Wakefield's idea. However, it was later found out that he had falsified much of his research in exchange for a bribe from a legal company who wanted monetary compensation for their clients from some manufacturers of MMR vaccines. He had a sample size of 12 children, and much of his data was gathered without informed consent. And as a result of the investigation, he lost his medical license. Even after the alleged link between MMR and autism was in large part debunked, a lot of anti-vaxxers still promoted the idea that autism was related to preservatives in vaccines, namely thimerosal. This idea was largely discredited when thimerosal was removed from all childhood vaccines starting in 2001, and yet since then autism rates have continued to climb, which is the exact opposite of what you would expect if there was a causation link between thimerosal and autism. Argument number 2, the potential side effects of vaccines are not worth the risk. There are 2 main ingredients, one I already mentioned, which people have major concerns about in vaccines. They are mercury and aluminum. Mercury, which is what thimerosal is added to vaccines as a preservative. This started after a tragedy in 1928 when a group of children died after being vaccinated for diphtheria because their vial was contaminated by a staph infection, and so they all contracted staph and passed away. And there are 2 kinds of mercury. There's a methyl mercury, which is what we're exposed to when we eat fish and seafood. And there's also ethyl mercury, which is the kind in thimerosal, which is metabolized and excreted much quicker by the body. Methyl mercury, the kind in fish, is a potential neurotoxin if consumed in large amounts. And for that reason, even though there wasn't evidence against ethyl mercury being dangerous, thimerosal was removed from all but one of the vaccines beginning in 2001. The only one it's still in is influenza A, and there is a thimerosal-free version of the vaccine available in some areas. There is no evidence of harm caused by the low dose of thimerosal, but the Public Health Service Agency's American Academy of Pediatrics and vaccine manufacturers all agreed that it would be best to remove thimerosal as a precautionary measure. The next ingredient of concern is aluminum. Aluminum is used as an adjuvant in vaccines, which makes an adjuvant is something that makes the immune response stronger. Aluminum adjuvants are used in vaccines for hepatitis, diphtheria, and pneumococcal. And the concern is that children will be exposed to potentially harmful levels of aluminum. However, after researching the levels of aluminum in vaccines, it's important to note that children are exposed to about 4.4 milligrams of aluminum from the vaccines they received in their first 6 months of life. And they would receive about 7 milligrams of aluminum if they were just exclusively breastfed during that time. So the idea that 4 would be harmful when they get more from breast milk doesn't remain a very valid claim. And also formula-fed babies receive about 40 milligrams of aluminum in their first 6 months of life. So it's important to remember that amounts do matter. Not everything is poison if it's consumed in a non-harmful amount. Too much plain water can be deadly. Too much sunlight causes burns, and yet we can't live without it. So just because something can be harmful in large amounts does not make it poison. That being said, it's important to note that there are reported side effects from vaccines. Vaccines are a medical intervention, and as with all medical interventions, there are side effects. You can find a complete list of reported side effects from all the different childhood vaccines on immunize.org, and I would encourage you to do so. There are some that are serious. There have been reports of anaphylaxis and even brain damage from people who were allergic to some vaccines, just as there are with all medications. However, the vast majority of immunization side effects are mild, mainly including redness and swelling at the injection site. Argument number 4 is the onslaught of so many vaccines will be harmful to a child's immune system. And it's interesting to note that 100 years ago, we only got one vaccine, whereas the schedule now is 14 different vaccinations that can be administered in up to 26 immunizations. However, there were more immunological agents, more particles that the body was reacting to in the single smallpox vaccine than there are in all 26 today. The smallpox vaccine contained approximately 200 immunological agents, whereas all the vaccines combined today contain approximately 116 immunological agents. And so the idea that it overwhelms immunity is just doesn't hold much water when you look into the immunological response. Dr. Paul Offit says, this is the irony of the effect of vaccines. It has made parents unaware of the life-threatening illnesses that were threatening the lives of all children just 100 years ago. So my message to you is don't be fooled. Vaccine preventable illnesses are not a Bigfoot story made up to scare you. They are real. Vaccines save lives. Make sure you are relying on science and not on anecdotes or fear mongering. Do your research, then if your children are healthy, please vaccinate them. Thank you.